Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining and welcome back to Wall Street Silver. Joining us today is the legend Willem Middelkoop, author of The Big Reset and founder of Commodity Discovery Fund. Willem, welcome back.
Great to be back.
Yeah,
Been a while. Been a while.
yeah, it's an absolute pleasure having you back on. So, Willem, the Fed have trapped themselves, and it's a trap of their own making. Some say it goes all the way back 30 years since Greenspan bailed out long-term capital. How bad is Powell's dilemma right now, and how will it affect silver and gold?
I think it goes back way longer. When I was in China in 2015 or 16, the Chinese edition of the Big Reset was published by Renmin University. And I was asked to do a speech at the Chinese International Monetary Institute, and that's like a high-level think tank on monetary affairs. And actually, I was quite surprised because I never went to the university, so I'm a bit self-taught economist, monetary historian, and when I arrived in Beijing and I was preparing to do the speech, I had this Chinese professor. And he was, helping me a bit. And I asked him for what's the best title for my speech, for my presentation. And he said, after waiting for 44 years. I thought that's a strange title. So I was thinking, what's the meaning of this? And then when I asked him why after 44 years, I said, well, that refers to 1971. They told me, they learned me, they had been waiting for 44 years to have a change in the system, to get a more honest system. And of course, that was 2015. We're 8 years further down the road. So after waiting for 52 years, the central bankers know they're trapped now for many reasons. And the interest rates, that's only one of the reasons. But the largest trap is the trap of the fiat money, the debasement of currencies. And I always had this thesis, that's the thesis of the Big Reset, that you need to find a new anchor for world's financial system. You need to find a successor for the dollar.
Right.
You need to restore the connection to something tangible like gold or whatever, but you can't just keep on printing money out of thin air and think inflation will be kept in check. And so there's a good reason why we have this super inflation and why there's so much distrust. But the most important development for me is that so many countries are willing to join the BRICS alliance now. And that clearly shows we're in the middle of this reset. This monetary reset has started. And so many countries are fed up with the double standards from the West. And they don't want to see changes, they create changes.
Well, you see people there, you see the US dollar, Willem, they're basically weaponizing it against this country, that country for many, many years now. At some point it hits a boiling point. Do you think the BRICS nation will be successful to have a commodities-backed currency? Do you think they will actually be successful, or will the West try to tear it down?
I don't know if they will be successful to have a commodity or gold-backed system. I don't know if that's their goal, although Putin has been stating that. But I do know we are in the last inning of the current dollar-centered international monetary system. Because why am I so sure about that? Because we have already reached the end of the petrodollar system, which has been the foundation for the US dollar since 1973 or 74, because Kissinger understood very well that after Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard in August 15, 1971, that the US needed to find a new foundation for the US dollar. And Kissinger understood very well when he could convince the Arabs, the Saudis, to sell their oil only in dollars, that would be the new foundation for the dollar. So now we have proof that the Saudis are willing to accept other currencies than the dollar, because they have been doing business with China in other currencies than the dollar. And we have proof that we reached the end of the petrodollar system, because the petrodollar system was telling you that all deals need to be done in dollars.
Exactly.
And what's very interesting, the Saudis are importing twice as much oil from Russia now and sell it to the West on a profit. So the petrodollar deal is dead. Now the Saudis are openly flirting with the BRICS countries and willing to join them. That's what we hear from certain countries. And there will be a BRICS conference in August this year, and that will be very interesting. But we see Mexico willing to join, Argentina is willing to join. There's a list of companies willing to join the BRICS, and the BRICS economy, the total BRICS economy, is already larger than the G7 economy. If you look at the people living in the BRICS countries, that's already surpassing 3 billion. And if you look at the US, that's 340 million. Europe is for 500 million. So
Right.
the countries supporting this current sanctions is less than 1.5 billion. And all the 140 countries who are not joining us in the sanctions against Russia, that's over 6 billion people. So we lost the numbers game already.
Where does this go next? Like, is it inevitable that we see, like, banks now are buying more gold than they have in the past 55 years, since 1967 or so? Are they preparing for de-dollarization, like full-on de-dollarization?
Central banks have been buying a record amount of physical gold, the most since 1967. And that's very telling, because what happened in 1967, I told you about the petrodollar deal, which is very important to understand this all, but some other period is very important to understand, and that's the period of the London gold pool from the 1960s. The London gold pool was an agreement among Western central banks to keep gold in check at $35 per ounce. And to keep gold in check, they were selling bits, small amounts, large amounts of their gold holdings from the central bank vaults. And that broke down in 67, 68, because many European countries were exchanging surplus dollars to the US and asking physical gold in return. The US lost half of its gold during those years. Wow. So countries, central banks in 1967, 68 knew the end of the London gold pool would lead to a massive revaluation of gold, which actually happened, because gold ran from $35 per ounce in 68 to $800 in 1980. And I think we're witnessing the same now. You could say this is the end of the London gold pool too, in which the Western countries have been joining forces to manage the gold price, control the gold price, manipulate the gold price. We all know JP Morgan's metal desk was called a criminal enterprise by the Department of Justice. They were fined up to $1 billion for messing up with the metals market. So I think we're also in the last inning of this manipulation of the precious metals prices. And then it gets very interesting, because you know, your Wall Street Silver, that silver is trading less than 50% of its 1980 highs, the only metal trading at such a large discount. And we've seen silver starting to move. They're still controlling it. You can see that the open interest on the future markets, the open interest in silver is the max. You know, it's larger than in gold and in platinum. It's way larger than palladium or orange juice or whatever. But I expect these markets to break somewhere, but don't ask me which week this will be. You know, we had a record amount of gold buying by central banks in 1967, 68. It took another 3 years for Nixon to take the dollar off the gold standard. You know, it can take a while, but we know we're in this end game.
With all the chaos in the market, Willem, where are you putting your money right now, or where are you investing right now?
Well, I have myself as a private investor. I stick to my very simple formula: 25% of net worth in real estate, 25% in physical, 25% in equities. I prefer commodity-based equities, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And 25% I keep liquid. And you can use that to buy Bitcoin as well if you like Bitcoin. But as a fund manager in our fund, we have around $200 million dollars invested in these markets. And we're on the hunt for all major, commodity projects which are not yet developed into a mine. And we don't care if it's gold, silver, copper, or nickel, or uranium, or even diamonds.
Right.
If a small exploration company is responsible for a significant discovery, we're metal agnostic. We don't care if it's Australia, if it's Uganda, or is it or Canada. We just buy it all, because I think we're in the perfect storm now for commodities. We have this very high inflation. We have the debasement of currencies, the ongoing debasement of currency, which should lead to a revaluation of gold,
Mm-hmm.
and other metals. And then you have the geopolitics. It's West against the rest now, where the Western countries want to arrange their own mine metal supply, commodity supply. So this is like a perfect storm developing. And the most important thing I forgot to mention, there are huge shortages coming in many of these metals. We do a lot of supply and demand studies. And if you look at these studies, after 2025, there are shortages everywhere in the metal complex, and even in uranium. And look what happens in the EV metals. Lithium, we're building position in lithium now,
Mm-hmm.
because in lithium, the lithium market, the physical lithium market, some 10 years ago, it was less than 1 billion a year. The total world physical lithium
Right.
market. That market will grow towards 200 billion a year in 2035, because we need all the lithium for the EV batteries.
So what happens, like, let's connect EV and let's connect the green revolution that's coming soon with silver, because obviously you need silver for some of these EV technologies. Let's say there's a shortage soon in silver and some of these metals. What happens to the actual price? Like, let's say manipulation gets broken, and then there's shortages in the future. Who doesn't get their silver? The investor? Does it go just straight to industrial silver? What happens there, Willem?
That's a very important question. And there's a great example out there, and I think you can edit some slides in this this video, because I will send you 2 slides. And one shows you the open interest among the different metals in, let's say, 8 years ago, in 2017. And another slide will show you the open interest in the precious metals nowadays. And then you can see that the open interest used to be very high for palladium as well. But then there was a very strong demand for the physical palladium in 2017, 2018. The shorts were squeezed. The market went up 4x. So palladium went up 4x in a very short time frame. And what we see now, that they lost control over the price of palladium. The open interest in palladium futures is still way down compared to 8 years ago.
Right.
The same will happen with platinum, with gold, and especially with silver. So at a certain point, the markets will squeeze out the shorts in silver. Well, I think that's the core thesis of you guys. And I can support that with these graphs. I've never shown them in public. And I think that tells the full story.
Absolutely. And just connecting it back with the catastrophe that's happening with the economy, Janet Yellen keeps saying there's a huge economic catastrophe coming due to the debt ceiling dilemma. Is it all just for show, or could they seriously default? What do you think there? No. See, there
of course. In theory, they could default. US could default, but we all know, and Yellen knows, that that's the end of the financial system. That's the end of financial market. So it's just pressure building. and see who blinks first, and it's a game of poker. It's US. It's political games in the US. So markets are not that nervous, but you see these CDS premiums rise, and that's a sign. And of course, it tells you that the broader financial markets are getting very nervous about the US longer term, because the current system and the growth of the national debt, it's unsustainable. And with the ongoing developments of the BRICS nations, this is an accident waiting to happen. And that explains why gold and silver are starting to move. And gold is already up $400. And now it gets very interesting from a technical perspective, because we've seen gold reaching 2000 or even 2080 a few times now. And of course, many investors think this will be the top again, this will be the top again, and it will go down again. And that's why the equities are still, not running. And there's a huge difference between the valuation of the physical, the precious metals, and the equities related to those markets. But once, and I've been saying this for the last 12 months in interviews, the resistance around 2000 will now become support. And actually, we've seen it yesterday. We had a huge attack through the futures markets on gold and silver. But the 2000 is now support. And once we break 2080 for gold, this will be the start of a big bull run. And that's when the equities, when the precious metals related equities, and I think the whole mining space will start to run. And actually, it will be the third real major bull market. The first real major bull market was in the 70s. Then we had a long correction between the 1980 and 2000 correction, downtrend of 20 years. Then you had the second bull market. I can send you a graph about that as well.
Yes.
From 2000 till, well, let's say 2010. And then we had another very long correction. I was stupid enough to start a metals-related fund in 2008 at the last top of the cycle. And now we're starting the next bull run, and that can take you up to $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 gold. And silver could run much higher. And if I look from another technical perspective, I love the Elliott wave technical analysis. A.V. Gilbert is the best analyst out there, and he stated this in public several times. We're witnessing the start of a new bull market in the whole commodity space, and that will run till 2050.
Wow, that'll be exciting.
You know what his goal is for gold?
What's that?
$25,000.
Oh, that would be incredible.
His goal for silver is $1,000.
Well, it's not out of the question if you look at Bitcoin and all. You know what I mean?
Well, he always points to the Dow Jones, which bottomed out in 1942. During the worst year of the Second World War, at 100 points, it ran to 30,000.
Wow!
It ran for almost 80 years. And A.V. Gilbert, he's not a stock promoter, he's not a gold promoter, he's a serious guy. He only looks at the technicals. And actually, he invited me to join him on a cruise in the Mediterranean in a few weeks' time. And I love to meet him finally in person and to know a little bit more about him, because he's the only one who called the top for gold in 2011. He's the only one who called the bottom as well in 2016.
Right.
So this guy knows his stuff, and I think he will be right.
Well, that's super exciting. We'd love to see 25,000 gold and 1,000 silver. That'd be incredible.
He also has a target for the HUI, the index for the gold-related producers, precious metals-related producers, is 10,000. We're at 260 now, 270. So we know, if you look, I have another great graph I can show you that shows how long the bull markets, the previous bull markets in gold and silver took in the 1970s and the 2000s. And it delivered average gains for the equities around 500% average gains, just if you were in the producers. We're in the high risk, high reward exploration discovery stocks. Well, if you have 500% up during a bull market in the major producers, the smaller companies will go up, well, 7, 8, 9x.
Wow. Well,
we had a tough time. Yeah, sorry, but we had a tough time. You know, we started at the top of the last cycle. So actually, we've been growing our fund. We had net inflows every year. So we have very loyal investors, and I'm very happy about that. But you know, the fund is ahead of us, and I always tell it within our office here, and we're here near Amsterdam. You see where we do the trading. Right. I always say I hope our fund will stay under 1 billion because our investment strategy works best when you're sub, let's say, 500 million.
Interesting.
But I'm really scared that you're in a bull market, you will run over 500 million AUM as a management for a company like us. And then, well, you can't do the strategy in the most effective way anymore.
Right. Well, it's you know what? It's a bright future for precious metals. I truly believe so. And Willem, we really want to thank you for coming down to Wall Street Silver. It's a huge pleasure having you on. And hopefully, as the market develops and we'll see what Powell does next, we can have you back on to talk about the next step that happens for gold.
Great idea.
Awesome.
Enjoy the weekend.
Awesome. Talk to you soon.